What if your greatest enemy arrived not carrying swords but carrying contracts instead? What if conquest began with trade before transforming into something far darker? Would anyone recognize the danger before it became impossible, stopping completely? In 17th century Java, one ruler believed he saw that danger clearly. While others saw merchants, he saw a storm approaching relentlessly from afar. The ships belonged to a powerful company known as the VOC. Officially, they traded spices, textiles, and wealth across oceans and continents. Unofficially, they gathered influence, power, and opportunities for domination patiently. Every agreement opened doors that armies could never force open. Sultan Agung watched these developments with growing concern and suspicion daily. He understood something many leaders had not realized yet fully. Economic control often becomes political control sooner or later, inevitably. Across Java, ports grew busier, while foreign influence expanded steadily. Prosperity attracted attention, and attention attracted dangerous ambitions from abroad. The balance of power was quietly beginning to change forever. At the center stood Batavia, headquarters of VOC operations throughout Asia. Its walls protected more than merchants. They protected future ambitions. Sultan Agung believed allowing Batavia to thrive invited catastrophe eventually. A confrontation seemed unavoidable as both powers expanded their reach steadily. One represented a kingdom, the other represented corporate empire emerging. Their collision would shape the future of the archipelago profoundly. Yet neither side fully understood the consequences awaiting beyond victory. The struggle ahead was larger than territory or trade alone. It was a battle over who would control the future. Sultan Agung was not merely a warrior, he was a visionary ruler. He dreamed of uniting Java under one authority and shared purpose. Fragmented kingdoms weakened resistance against external threats emerging rapidly. Unity offered strength, stability, and protection against foreign interference. One by one, regions gradually entered Mataram's expanding sphere successfully. Every victory increased both prestige and responsibility for the kingdom. Soldiers trained relentlessly, preparing for challenges greater than regional conflicts. The kingdom's ambitions stretched far beyond ordinary territorial expansion alone. Sultan Agung believed Java deserved independence from foreign manipulation completely. Local rulers faced difficult choices between resistance and cooperation constantly. Some joined willingly, others yielded after recognizing Mataram's growing power. Gradually, a stronger political landscape began taking shape across Java. Prosperity followed stability, strengthening agriculture, trade, and administrative systems. Yet prosperity often attracts ambitious outsiders seeking opportunities and influence. The VOC recognized the value of Java immediately and strategically. Their methods differed from traditional conquerors marching openly into battle. Instead, they built networks through commerce, agreements, and calculated diplomacy. Every partnership expanded their reach without firing a single cannon. Sultan Agung observed these developments with increasing unease and caution. The threat seemed invisible to many, yet obvious to him. Foreign merchants were becoming political players with alarming speed everywhere. Batavia grew stronger while Mataram continued consolidating inland territories steadily. Two powers expanded simultaneously, moving toward inevitable confrontation slowly. Soon, diplomacy would no longer be enough to prevent conflict. Batavia was no ordinary trading post. It was becoming a fortress. Ships arrived constantly, bringing wealth, supplies, soldiers, and strategic advantages. Every successful voyage strengthened VOC influence throughout the archipelago further. Inside Batavia, merchants thought beyond profits and commercial opportunities alone. They envisioned lasting dominance secured through trade and political leverage. Wealth generated power, and power generated even greater opportunities rapidly. Local rulers faced growing pressure when dealing with VOC representatives. Agreements often appeared beneficial before revealing hidden long-term consequences. Influence spread quietly through contracts instead of conquest openly displayed. Reports reached Sultan Agung describing Batavia's increasing strength and confidence. Each report confirmed fears he had carried for years already. Waiting longer would only make the challenge more dangerous later. Maps revealed an uncomfortable truth about changing regional power dynamics. Batavia was becoming the heart of foreign influence in Java. If left unchecked, that influence could dominate entire trade networks. Military leaders gathered to discuss possible responses and future strategies. Some urged caution, while others favored immediate decisive action instead. The debate reflected the enormous risks involved in confronting VOC. Sultan Agung listened carefully before reaching a historic conclusion finally. Batavia could not remain untouched if Java hoped staying independent. The kingdom would eventually need confronting this growing threat directly. War had not begun yet, but its shadow was visible. Across Java, tension quietly intensified beneath everyday life and commerce. Soon, one decision would place thousands on a collision course. Eventually, the moment arrived when discussion could no longer replace action. Sultan Agung made a decision that would define his legacy forever. Batavia had to be attacked before VOC became unstoppable completely. Orders spread rapidly across Mataram's vast territories and loyal allies. Warriors answered the call from villages, towns, and noble households. The kingdom began preparing for an unprecedented military operation immediately. Weapons were forged continuously as anticipation filled workshops everywhere. Every spear, blade, and arrow represented determination against foreign influence. Confidence grew among soldiers believing history stood within their reach. Logistics became just as important as courage during preparations. Vast quantities of food and supplies needed transporting efficiently. Success depended not only on bravery, but careful organization too. Thousands of troops began moving across challenging terrain toward Batavia. Forests, rivers, and distance-tested endurance before battle even started. The march itself became a demonstration of Mataram's power. Commanders studied maps repeatedly, searching for advantages and vulnerabilities carefully. Every route carried risks requiring difficult strategic decisions constantly. Yet confidence remained high as momentum carried the army forward. Under darkening skies, thousands continued advancing toward their objective relentlessly. Many believed they were participating in a mission larger themselves. The future of Java seemed connected to the campaign ahead. Meanwhile, VOC scouts reported alarming movements approaching from the east. Batavia's leaders realized this threat was unlike any before. The stage was set for a historic confrontation of wills. Finally, the walls of Batavia appeared before Mataram's advancing army dramatically. Thousands of warriors stared at the fortress, blocking their ambitions ahead. This was the heart of VOC power in the archipelago. Inside the walls, defenders prepared for a long and brutal siege. Cannons were positioned carefully while supplies remained under strict protection. VOC leaders knew surrender was never an acceptable option. Outside, war drums thundered across fields surrounding the fortified city. The sound carried anticipation, fear, determination, and uncertainty simultaneously. Every soldier understood history might remember what happened next. Then the first shot shattered the tense silence completely. Cannon fire erupted, marking the beginning of open conflict. Smoke rolled across the battlefield as both sides engaged fiercely. Mataram forces pushed forward, seeking weaknesses in Batavia's defenses aggressively. Defenders responded with disciplined volleys and powerful artillery attacks. Every advance demanded sacrifice as casualties gradually increased. Yet retreat was unthinkable after such enormous preparation efforts. Soldiers continued pressing forward despite relentless resistance from defenders. Courage alone, however, could not easily overcome fortified positions. VOC commanders coordinated defenses with remarkable efficiency under pressure. Their survival depended on discipline, organization, and patience above all. Meanwhile, Mataram sought opportunities to break the fortress gradually. The siege expanded into a contest of endurance rather than speed. Days passed as neither side achieved decisive success immediately. What seemed a battle of strength became a battle of survival. As weeks passed, victory seemed farther away than expected initially. The battlefield revealed challenges impossible solving through bravery alone. Heat, exhaustion, and uncertainty began wearing down the army steadily. Food supplies diminished faster than planners had anticipated beforehand. Every passing day increased pressure on soldiers and commanders alike. Hunger quietly became an enemy standing beside VOC forces. Supply routes stretched across difficult terrain vulnerable to disruption constantly. Delivering resources became a challenge requiring extraordinary effort repeatedly. Distance transformed logistics into one of Mataram's greatest obstacles. Then another threat emerged from within the crowded camps suddenly. Disease spread among exhausted soldiers living under difficult conditions daily. Illness weakened units before they could face enemies directly. Inside Batavia, defenders still maintained access to critical resources. Their position allowed them enduring hardships more effectively than attackers. The balance slowly shifted despite Mataram's numerical advantages. Commanders gathered repeatedly, searching for solutions to growing crises. Every proposal carried risks and uncertain chances of success. The siege demanded patience, while resources demanded immediate action instead. Soldiers stared at Batavia's walls, wondering how much longer remained. Determination persisted, but fatigue increasingly shaped daily reality. The campaign had become a test of endurance and resilience. Reports reached Sultan Agung describing worsening conditions near Batavia. Each message carried difficult truths impossible ignoring any longer. The kingdom now faced choices with enormous consequences ahead. Despite mounting difficulties, Mataram refused abandoning the campaign entirely. Commanders searched tirelessly for opportunities to regain strategic momentum quickly. Then a bold plan emerged, offering renewed hope to everyone. Instead of attacking walls directly, focus shifted toward enemy supplies. If Batavia could not be stormed, it could be starved. Elite units moved carefully against vulnerable logistical targets nearby. Supply routes became battlegrounds where control meant survival itself. Mataram forces struck aggressively, disrupting essential deliveries repeatedly. Every successful raid increased pressure on Batavia's defenders significantly. Warehouses burned as valuable resources disappeared into smoke and flames. The strategy appeared capable of changing the course entirely. For the first time, VOC leaders faced genuine concern internally. Reports described shortages and growing anxiety within the fortress. Confidence weakened as uncertainty replaced previous assumptions of safety. Suddenly, victory no longer seemed impossible for Mataram anymore. Soldiers celebrated successes that boosted morale across the camps. Stories spread quickly, fueling belief that Batavia might finally fall. Hope became a powerful weapon supporting exhausted warriors daily. Yet hope can also create dangerous expectations when circumstances remain fragile. Both sides now operated under immense pressure and uncertainty constantly. The outcome appeared balanced on decisions made during critical days. Batavia seemed vulnerable in ways rarely seen before historically. Many believed the turning point had finally arrived at last. But history still held one devastating surprise in reserve. Just when victory seemed possible, reality struck with brutal force unexpectedly. The greatest threat was no longer hidden behind Batavia's walls. It lived within the camps, spreading silently among exhausted soldiers. Disease moved faster than orders, strategies, or reinforcements ever could. Every day brought new casualties unrelated to direct combat itself. The army weakened gradually under pressures impossible completely controlling. Reports became increasingly grim as shortages worsened throughout encampments. Commanders faced impossible decisions affecting thousands of lives simultaneously. Continuing the siege risked catastrophe, yet retreat carried humiliation. Soldiers fought exhaustion as fiercely as they fought VOC defenders. Hunger drained strength, while uncertainty eroded confidence steadily. The dream of capturing Batavia began slipping further away. VOC commanders noticed changes occurring beyond their defensive walls. Signs of weakening resistance offered renewed hope for survival. Patience was finally producing results for Batavia's defenders. Across the battlefield, abandoned equipment reflected mounting hardships everywhere. Warriors who once marched proudly now struggled, simply enduring daily. Momentum shifted slowly but unmistakably away from Mataram's favor. Eventually, the painful truth became impossible denying any longer. The siege could not continue under such devastating conditions. Orders spread, and withdrawal began despite enormous sacrifices already made. Far from the battlefield, Sultan Agung received the crushing news. Years of preparation had ended without achieving the desired victory. Yet the deepest consequences were only beginning to emerge afterward. Most people remember victories, yet history often hides deeper truths elsewhere. Sultan Agung failed to capture Batavia despite extraordinary effort and sacrifice. On paper, the campaign ended as a painful military defeat. Batavia survived and VOC continued operating from its fortified headquarters. Ships kept arriving, bringing wealth, reinforcements, and expanding opportunities. The company emerged weakened, perhaps, but certainly not destroyed completely. Then something remarkable became clearer as years continued passing afterward. The danger Sultan Agung feared never disappeared from the archipelago. Instead, it continued growing through commerce and political influence steadily. Agreements became leverage, and leverage gradually became authority over others. Local disputes increasingly offered opportunities for foreign intervention and control. Influence spread farther than any single military campaign could achieve. This revealed the true nature of the struggle all along. Sultan Agung was confronting more than merchants seeking profits merely. He was confronting a system capable of transforming trade into domination. The battlefield around Batavia represented only one chapter of conflict. The larger contest concerned the future direction of entire regions, and in that sense, Sultan Agung understood the threat early. Perhaps that realization explains why his story remains powerful today. He saw consequences others struggled recognizing until much later. Sometimes history rewards vision, sometimes it punishes those possessing it. His warning echoed long after cannons fell silent around Batavia. Future generations would witness many fears becoming reality gradually. And that changes how this defeat should be understood entirely. In the years following Batavia, history continued unfolding in unexpected ways. The siege ended, but the larger struggle was far from over. New generations inherited challenges Sultan Agung had recognized earlier. VOC influence expanded steadily through commerce, diplomacy, and strategic intervention. What began as trade increasingly shaped politics across many regions. Economic power translated into leverage difficult for kingdoms resisting effectively. The pattern Sultan Agung feared became easier observing over time. Trade created dependence, and dependence often created opportunities for control. Influence expanded without always requiring large-scale military conquest directly. This transformation altered the political landscape of the archipelago profoundly. Kingdoms increasingly navigated pressures beyond traditional rivalries and conflicts. The world was changing faster than many leaders anticipated. Looking back, Sultan Agung appears as more than a warrior king. He appears as a leader attempting protecting long-term independence fiercely. His campaign reflected a vision extending beyond immediate military objectives. Not every warning is believed when first spoken aloud publicly. Sometimes people recognize truth only after consequences become unavoidable. That realization gives this story its enduring emotional weight today. The siege failed, yet its lessons survived far longer afterward. History remembers victories, but wisdom often emerges from defeats instead. A lost battle can still reveal truths shaping future generations. Sultan Agung could not stop every change approaching the archipelago, yet his resistance became a symbol of determination against domination. And that legacy continues echoing across Indonesian history even today.